Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital's Teaching Kitchen. My name is Chef Emily, and we are very fortunate today to have a fabulous guest, Tanya Inlaw. She is the Director of Volunteer Services here at New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital, and she's joining us for this very, very important and special class focused on African heritage cuisine in recognition, of course, of Black History Month. So for those of you that weren't aware, February, I know we're coming to the end of it here. February is Black History Month. And today we really want to create a safe space and a container for all of us to discuss race and African heritage cuisine. We're going to open with a poem that Tanya has selected and is going to read to us, a poem by Maya Angelou. And then we'll engage in some cooking. And that will be followed by a personal story shared by Tanya. And Tanya also has a prayer for us to share for Black History Month. So that is our program and agenda today. Just a brief reminder to everybody who is joining us to keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation. If you have questions, of course, we encourage your questions. And please type them into the chat box. And we have our wonderful coordinator, Catherine Maroney, joining us to moderate the program today. So she's going to be conveying and relaying your questions from the chat box to Tanya and myself. So with that, thank you so much, Tanya, for volunteering to join me for this program and sharing this class with me and creating this space together. Tanya, I'll turn it over to you to read us the poem.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome everyone. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy, some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight, brown, pink, and beige and purple, tan, blue, and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their feature jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China. We weep on England's moors and laugh and moan in Guinea and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In major ways we differ. In major, we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Welcome, everyone. Emily?
Thank you so much, Tanya. That was really beautiful and such a poignant message for all of us. Thank you. I'm also running the spotlight today, so I will be jumping behind my camera on occasion just to shift the focus to myself and Tanya. So if I disappear for a moment, don't panic, that's what I'm doing. All right, so thank you. And today, again, we're focusing on celebrating African heritage cuisine by featuring foods such as okra, collard greens, and black-eyed peas. So African ancestors dispersed during the transatlantic slave trades from the 1500s to the 1800s. That is a huge stretch of time. Millions of people were taken from West and Central Africa to different regions throughout the Americas and the Caribbean. So these regions featured different local foods and cuisines, which shaped the cuisine and developed cultural distinctions that really have reason to be celebrated. So African American cuisine includes foods such as cabbage, okra, tomatoes, peppers, pickled foods, and more. Afro-Caribbean food includes a variety of seafood, tropical fruits, rice, peas, coconut milk, and more. And then Afro-South American includes staples such as rice and beans, yuca, cassava, okra, peanuts, squash, plantains, and more. So there's a lot of information in your packets, which are sent to you via PDF ahead of time about these different types of cuisine and how the foods of the African diaspora really influenced and shaped an entire cuisine and culture. So it's a really beautiful culture that we're here to celebrate today. And with that, Tanya, if it's all right with you, I'd like to begin with a little bit of cooking, and then we'll turn it over to you later to hear your story. Does that all sound good?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, all right, fantastic. So we're making 3 recipes today. The first one is featuring okra. Now, this is not a favorite for everybody, but I love it. So you can buy okra fresh, or you can buy it frozen. We'll be using the frozen one today. So either one will work for this recipe, whatever you prefer. We're gonna start by heating up our pan. And this is a kind of stew where the more you kind of let it sit and bubble together, the more the flavors have time to hang out, the more delicious it becomes. It's even more tasty the next day. So we're gonna start by heating that up. I did slice up the onion ahead of time just to move things along today because we have a lot to do, a lot to cover. And we also we're adding 2 jalapenos to this dish. So as that's heating up, I'm going to get my gloves on for the jalapeno, because if you've never worked with jalapeno, this is an important thing to know. It is a little bit spicy and hot, so it's good to protect your hands just in case you don't want it to irritate the skin. So when you're working with jalapeno, I take off a little bit of the top, slice it right in half, and we're going to pull out the seeds. You can use the knife to kind of tease out the center. Use the tip of the knife there and pull that out, right? So same for the other one. Make sure you get all the seeds out. If you like your food a little bit spicy, you can use some of these seeds. The spiciest part of hot peppers is always the seeds, not the flesh. So if you wanted, you could throw 1 or 2 seeds in there and add a little extra heat if you like that. I don't love spice. I wish I did, because there's a whole world of spice out there, but I'm going to take them out. And then I'm going to slice this thinly to create a little mince. So as I do this, Catherine, I'll just check in with you and see, do we have any questions so far, or anything that anybody wants to share?
Sure. First to share, Tanya, your reading of the poem was lovely. And as you see in chat, there are so many positive comments about that. And for anyone who would like a copy of the poem, we will send that to you. About the recipe, Chef Emily, E is asking, do other hot peppers irritate the skin also, and in what way?
Yeah, so they can. It just depends on the sensitivity of your skin. You may not be sensitive to hot peppers, but I am, so I prefer to wear gloves when I'm working with them. And then in what way? It will just, it can just kind of burn the skin a little bit. So that's why I prefer to work with gloves. Additionally, it'll make it easier after I work with the jalapeno. In case I should accidentally touch my eyes or something like that, it'll protect my, you don't want to touch your eyes or nose or mouth or anything like that after working with hot peppers, because it will sting and burn a lot. So yeah, good question. All right. So we're starting up with our onion here, a little bit of oil in our cast iron. I just did a nice thick slice on this, nothing too fancy. And we're just going to saute this kind of break it apart a little bit using your spoon. I have this on a medium-high heat, I would say. And we're going to continue just mincing our jalapeno. Okay. So this is, again, okra is a really wonderful food. It's traditional to Southern cuisine. It's low in calories, very low in calories. It's really high in fiber, and it even contains a little bit of protein as well. So if you haven't used okra before or worked with it before, it has a strong mucilaginous texture, which is a fancy word for slimy, but it is very good for you. So that mucilaginous texture is actually very good for the digestive tract in your gut health too. So it has a little bit of protein. That gel-like substance is actually called mucilage. And there's some potential, some studies that show that it potentially may even bind to cholesterol during digestion. So that's kind of an interesting thing about okra. These studies are still, being done, but either way, it's a good vegetable to add to your diet. Basically what that does is it would hypothetically cause the cholesterol to be excreted rather than absorbed. So it's potentially a good cholesterol lowering food. And then cooking okra with an acid like tomato sauce, like we're going to do today, can actually help to reduce the gumminess, that kind of sticky gummy quality. So it reduces that a little bit if you don't like the texture. All right. So just going to saute this until they get a little soft. And I'll check in with you, Catherine. Do you have any other questions, maybe about okra or anything?
Not about okra,
Yes.
but if you can follow up, Chef Emily, with one more question from E
Sure.
about the hot peppers. How about the effect on the digestive tract?
So again, it just depends on your sensitivity. Everybody is different. Some people don't even notice if you put, 6 jalapenos in their meal, and other people do. So I would have to say it's a very individualized experience.
And same for okra?
So for okra, okra's not spicy, so I wouldn't worry about it in that sense. Yeah, good questions.
Chef Emily, one more question. What is the difference between mincing and chopping?
So that's a good question. Mincing is what I'm doing here. Mincing is a lot smaller than chopping. So mincing, this is how you mince basically. You put your hand on top of the knife and you work from the tip to the heel, right? And you go across, mincing up and down, kind of scraping it together, mincing across, right? So mincing is really, really small and chopping is big. That's the only difference.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just mincing up some garlic. See, I have my jalapeno mince, super tiny mince. Let's add that in. So everything's going in with our onion. We're also going to add some wonderful spices to this, which is going to give it some really nice aroma. We have some paprika, just regular paprika, some freshly ground coriander, and some freshly ground allspice as well. So those are the 3 spices that we're using today. And I'm just kind of tossing everything together, getting a little heat on it. Let's add our spices right in there too. A little pinch of salt too. All right. We have our okra ready. It's already chopped up and ready to go. How easy is that to use? You can also, another way to prepare okra, if you really don't like that gummy kind of like slimy texture, you can roast it as well. So you could cut up, I wouldn't roast the frozen okra, but you could get the fresh okra and slice it up and roast it like you would, roast any kind of roasted vegetables like cauliflower or broccoli or anything like that. You can roast okra as well, and it's really, really good. All right. So we have our spices in there. We have our onions, our garlic, our jalapeno. We're going to add our tomatoes and our okra. So I have these grade A fancy, not sure what that means, but fancy okra, frozen okra going right in. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this dish. It's very, very simple. have some water here to kind of make this a nice stew. And you want to just kind of fold everything together so you make sure that it really takes on all the flavor of the spices. And that's it. It's a very, very simple dish, very flavorful, very healthy for you too, with something that you might not normally eat, right? It's good to include some variety in our dishes. I certainly, I like to eat lots of vegetables and I have lots of vegetables at home. But this time of year, I find that I keep going back to the same vegetables, beets and sweet potatoes and cauliflower and, things that are a little bit wintry. So it's nice to add some variety into your cooking just for your own satisfaction. All right. Any questions about that recipe? It was really easy.
Yes, Emily, there's one more comment, and I apologize in advance if I'm mispronouncing this name. Bhavik Patel is adding that a fun tip is you add salt after the okra has cooked for a bit, so it doesn't become slimy during the cooking process. What do you think about that?
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. I did add salt to this. I kind of instinctively add salts to, I season everything that I cook. It's what we're taught to do in culinary school. But I don't know from like the chemical standpoint what that does, but great. If it reduces some of that texture, then why not? Thank you. Thank you for your contribution.
And Chef Emily, one more question. Paula is asking, can okra stew be frozen after cooking?
Yeah, absolutely. Okra stew can be frozen after cooking. All right. So are we ready for our second recipe?
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. So the next recipe I'm going to make is called Okra, which is a black-eyed pea fritter. Basically, this is a labor of love. If you are making these, I will be very impressed because it is a labor of love. So first of all, I requested black-eyed peas from the shop from home, but I got pinto beans. So I guess that's what we're using today, which probably satisfies the question that somebody will ask, which will be, can you make this with a different kind of bean? Well, I think we're about to find out. So pinto beans, I'll show you what they look like. Here they are. They look a little different from black-eyed peas. They're very similar though. These have been soaked overnight. And then what you're gonna do is you'll notice there's a little white spot on the pinto bean on the side. I kind of dig in my thumbnail to peel a little, just get it a little loose there and then squeeze it to pop the skin off. I know some of you are thinking, is she serious right now? Are we really gonna peel beans? The answer is yes, we really did. So here they are, our peeled pinto beans, or I guess we'll pretend they're black-eyed peas because that's what they're supposed to be. All right, questions about that?
Chef Emily, no questions yet. I'll just quickly add that Alita is also referring to okra, saying if you soak it in vinegar for about a half an hour before cooking, that works.
I forgot about that. Thank you, Alita. Yeah, that's a good tip as well. You can soak it in vinegar to make it a little less slimy. Thank you. All right, so that's a good one. All right, so I've got half a jalapeno here. Again, I'm going to remove those seeds the same way I did for the other ones, just kind of teasing along the vein and pulling out the seeds. Put them in my compost bin over here. And then we're just going to give this a little chop. This is going to go into our blender with our peeled beans. I have to say, I was very, when I was putting this class together, I was very ambitious with what we were going to do today. But I believe in all of you so much. That's why. All right, we're going to peel our shallot. Just take off the papery exterior, taking off the skin. Cut this into a few chunks. It's going to help the blender blend it up, right? We want to flavor these from the inside. So we've got some jalapeno in there. We have our shallot in there. And I'm just going to drain off some of this water and put these in. Okay. So here are the shelled beans. We're actually going to be adding water to this to kind of help it, but I like to control the amount of water that I add. Let's add a little bit of salt to this, about a teaspoon or so, and we'll get this started in a blender. So I apologize, it is going to be a little noisy as we get started here, and see how we do. Add a little water as we go. To help push along. You want to, start off with a little bit of water and work a small amount at a time. I probably put in about a quarter cup, and then I'm going to put in a little bit more. So it's starting to form this sort of thick batter. This is good. We're going to add a little bit more water and just blend it up. So I have some oil heating up over there in my wok. You can use, any kind of high-sided pan or pot that you have. You can use that. All right, so this is perfect. Now it's nice and smooth and creamy. This is what you want it to look like. So it almost looks like almost like a crepe batter or something like that, maybe a little bit thicker. All right, so I did an experiment before this class. I left the skin on some of the beans, and I blended them with the same shallot and jalapeno and fried them up to see how they would, be with the skin on. And they really weren't too bad. So they're not going to be as creamy as this. I've never done them with skin on, but I thought, if someone didn't want to peel their beans, how might that look for them? So I tried some with the skin on, and this is sort of what they looked like when they were done. So they're a little bit more textured in the middle. They're not really as creamy as the other ones, but it is an option, I would say, if you wanted to try it that way. Any questions?
Chef Emily, some questions came in about the preparation for the beans and also about the black-eyed peas. Claudia is asking, how long does it take to prepare the beans for this recipe? And Donna is asking, why do you peel the black-eyed peas?
Okay, so how long does it take to prepare the beans? Let's answer that question first. I'm just going to scoot this okra stew back here so we can work up so you guys can see. So you want to soak the beans overnight. So that's going to be, that's going to be an 8-hour thing on its own, just soaking the beans overnight. And then after you soak them, you remove them, drain them from the soaking liquid, right? Drain them from the water. So you'll have this, and then you peel them. So honestly, to get 2 cups of peeled beans, it took about an hour to peel them. So, from start to finish. So, but that's something you can just do like as you're watching a show in front of the TV or talking to a friend on the phone. It's just kind of like, you don't really have to pay attention while you're doing it. So yeah, that was the first question. And then what was the question? Why do you peel the black-eyed peas? So that's the second question, right, Kathy?
Correct.
Okay. And that was from Donna, I believe. So you peel the black-eyed peas because, well, first of all, that's the traditional way of making these. And second of all, I can tell, I'm just going to show you the difference of when you peel and when you don't. So you can see it. So this is unpeeled. Okay. And this is peeled. I don't know if you can see that very well, but right. So you can see this is much smoother and a lot creamier than the ones that are not peeled. So yeah, that would be the answer, is it's a textural difference. All right, let's do a little test. Almost hot enough. Yes, Kathy.
And Chef Emily, I'd like to ask a question from Bettina, but along the point that you just made, Valerie is asking, would leaving the skin on beans add fiber to the dish?
Yeah, so Valerie, that's a perfect point. You are correct. The taking off the skins, of course, does take out some of the fiber. So yes, leaving the skins on, you're gonna have more fiber in your dish. Yeah.
And one last question for now from Bettina.
Sure.
If we used canned beans, would they still have to be shelled?
Ooh, so usually I say you can use canned instead of fresh. You cannot use canned beans for this recipe. It will not work. You have to use the fresh beans that are soaked. Thank you so much for asking that, Tina. That is a great clarifying question. All right, these are going in. I'm going to do about a 1/4 cup per fritter. So the oil is hot. I'm using avocado oil to fry. And I'll do 4 at a time. You never really want to overload your pot. You want to just kind of make sure they have enough space to move around. So I have a slotted spoon here. I can kind of just move these around a little bit so they have some space to float. But yeah, these look very, very different from the ones with skin on. So you want to just make sure, you know, they get cooked on both sides, move them around so they can really brown evenly. I rarely fry things in this kitchen. You know, we try to keep things as healthy as possible. If you wanted to bake these, you could. There is an option for that included in your recipe packet. It is, you know, it's a little involved, and you know, you have to basically use a muffin tin and you can kind of bake them, but it does work to bake them as well. Of course, it's not going to be exactly the same, but at least it's close. All right, any other questions? And then we'll wrap up with our third recipe, which is the collard greens.
Chef Emily, Elaine is asking, aside from the fiber difference, is the nutritional value changed?
No, not really. Thanks, Elaine. Yeah, they're going to be the same because the skin is basically just fiber.
And Barry is asking if you can clarify, why don't the canned beans work for this recipe?
Yeah, so Barry, if you use canned beans, they just turn to, the texture is totally different. So it just doesn't, look, you might end up with something that's fried and delicious, but I wouldn't exactly call it akara. So you could give it a try, certainly, but it's not gonna, you know, be exactly this kind of recipe. Yeah, good questions, everybody. So here, these are done. I just wanna show you sort of what they look like. Maybe I'll put them on a plate up close so you can see them better. All right, so they're nice and puffy. And for fried food, considering it is a fried food, at least it's beans, right? I feel a little bit better about that. All right. And then for our third recipe, let's do the collards. I'm just gonna move this hot oil off to the side so we don't get it in the wrong place. Okay.
Chef Emily?
Yes.
Christopher's question is very helpful. Does the type of oil you use to fry it in matter?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So Christopher, thank you for asking that. Definitely the oil that we're using today is, it is not an olive oil, it's an avocado oil. So you want to use a different oil for frying that works better at high temperatures. So avocado oil is a really good one for that. Thank you. All right, are we ready for our third recipe? It's getting hot in here with the, okay, so I have to have fun. All right, I'm gonna take the leaves off the stem. And again, these are collard greens, kale's close cousin. So you can just kind of pop the leaves off the stems. You can eat the stems, they are edible, but as you can see, they're pure fiber. Look how stringy that is, right? So you just want to, make these a little bit more palatable. If you enjoy that fiber, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. So we're going to slice this up. And again, this recipe is really, really easy, very tasty, right? You have this beautiful bright collard greens. We have some garlic smashed. Our pan is heating up over here. Collard greens are one of the most nutrient-dense greens. They're in the cabbage family. 1 cup contains 3 grams of protein. I think like over 200% of your vitamin A, a lot of vitamin A. Vitamin K, 600% of your vitamin K, as well as some vitamin C. It contains minerals, of course, calcium, copper, potassium, magnesium, iron. So lots of really good things in here for you. And it's very low calorie too. So it's very, very good for you. All right, let's start with a little olive oil in our pan here. And we're gonna put our garlic right in. Get that going. And then we're gonna add our greens to this and kind of just saute them. So it's really useful to have a pair of tongs for this process when you're cooking greens. This kind of helps to move them around. I have some red pepper flakes. You can add this as well if you want to give it a little kick. So here are our red pepper flakes, Italian style. Okay. And we're just gonna kind of saute that, make sure that it gets a little oil everywhere. It's gonna start to wilt a little bit. Then we're gonna throw down some chicken stock, or you can use vegetable stock. In our case today, that's what we're using. And we're gonna cover it and just kind of let it cook and stew and simmer. With a little pinch of salt. So any questions about this recipe? It's a very easy way to make greens and really enjoy your collard. Again, not something that we tend to eat very often, but very, very good for us.
Chef Emily, Bettina is asking, would this recipe work with kale?
Yep, same with, yeah, it would work with kale too. Absolutely. So I'm just going to show you this beautiful, it's so vibrant and green and pretty. And we're going to chop down a little bit of vegetable stock here and cover it. And just let that simmer for a little while. And that's it. That one's really quick and easy, right? So at this time, it's about 3:30. I'd love to see if there are any questions before we turn it over to Tanya for story sharing.
Yes, Chef Emily, one more question about the use of the olive oil. Does it burn under high heat? Natalie is asking. And if you could clarify about olive oil versus virgin olive oil.
Okay. Sure. So olive oil does oxidize at high temperatures. You won't necessarily see it or smell it. It may start to smoke. And when it smokes, basically what has happened is that it's oxidized. So you should no longer use your olive oil if it hits a smoking point. There is a slight difference between extra virgin olive oil and olive oil that's not extra virgin, just regular olive oil, in terms of smoke point and temperature. The olive oils that are regular olive oils and not extra virgin can tolerate higher heats than extra virgin olive oils, which cannot tolerate, I think, over 350 degrees. So that's sort of why I recommend using olive oil for just gentle, light sauteing. I never fry with olive oil. Yeah. Great question.
Thank you, Chef Emily.
All right, you're welcome. So with that, as we're just kind of finishing up our recipes here, I'd like to turn it over to Tanya, who has an amazing story. It's just going to blow you away. It blew me away. So let's just leave it at that. Tanya, if you'd like to share your story today.
Thank you, Emily. And everything looks delicious. So I need a plate when you're finished.
Let me just put the spotlight on you.
Absolutely delicious. Anyway, my story relates to basically everyone. We all are either mothers or we have a mother. So I think it relates to everyone. You know, part of racism is judging someone based on how they look or their religion or how well they walk, or, you know, we spend a lot of time judging one another. But it's also based on the lack of voice being heard. So you make assumptions, and also you don't hear certain voices. So I'd like to give you a story that relates to something that happened to me. I happen to be mixed with Irish. So on one side of my family, we are Black, and on the other side, we are Irish. So it's funny because I was raised with everybody. So that was a benefit to me. But in addition to that, you learn that everybody's equal and really nobody's different. But a lot of times people do judge you based on how you look. So I was about ready to have my baby. So I went into the hospital. And when I went into the hospital, I had a great check-in, everything was fine. But after I delivered my baby, the next day I asked the nurse if she wouldn't mind bringing me my son. They told me I had a son. And by the way, I did see him when he came out, and I said, okay. My son happened to be more on the fair side and might be mistaken for not African American. So when the nurse came in, I called the nurse and I said, I'd like to see my son. And so she says, okay, well, we'll bring him right in. So of course she brought in a beautiful baby. But it was actually, he was a little bit bigger than my son. I remember my son being smaller, and he definitely didn't look like my son. He had curly hair. My son's hair was straight. His skin was brown. My son's skin was pale. And so I said, well, I don't know, but I just don't think this is my son. So the nurse actually left the room. So at that point, I'm looking at the baby, and I went over to the baby and I tried to, it's interesting how we have senses very early in life. So this baby actually knew that I was not his mother. And he showed me that by turning away, by whimpering and crying. So I called the nurse back in once again, and I said, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you must be busy in the OB area, but I don't think this baby belongs to me. And she turned around and said, yes, he's your baby. And it's definitely your baby. I said, okay, well, thank you so much. So finally, a third time. I mean, as the night progresses, I'm really looking at this baby thinking, I saw my baby when he came out, and he did not look like that. So of course, fear came over me on some level. But at the same time, I asked the nurse, again, I pushed the button again. This time I was scolded for bothering her, that she said that the maternity ward tonight is extremely busy, and I would appreciate it if you did not ring the bell again. Okay, so that being said, I said, well, I guess I have to learn to live with this baby then. So as the night progressed, I kept the baby all night, by the way, which was interesting because I was fearful in some way, thinking, well, clearly they think this is my baby, but I'm not quite sure. At that point, I think I felt vulnerable in some ways, being in a healthcare setting. I didn't want any retaliation. So I just kept the baby. So when I thought it was early enough in the morning, late enough in the morning, rather, excuse me, to phone my mother, I said, Mom, I think you should come because I don't think that I have the right baby, or something's wrong with the baby. So she panics, runs over, and she says, what's wrong with the baby? I said, I don't know. I think there's something wrong with it. And so, long story short, she said, that isn't Christopher. So I said, you're right. It's not. I've been trying to tell them all night that that's not Christopher. So she says, well, I will go and I will find out what's going on. So of course she went in the nursery. Long story short, she brought back my Christopher. So the moral of that story is I saw him and I said to myself, there he is. There's my baby. And so my mother said, well, they made an assumption about you without checking the bracelet. So my voice wasn't being heard, and I kept someone else's child. What's really important is somebody else must have been sleeping, didn't know that I had their baby in my presence for 8 hours. So really what we want is to hear each other. In any situation, it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, how you look, how you live, what religion you are. We have to invite everybody to the party. And we really have to work on that because I think we are one group of people where there are no differences. We are all family. And thank you for listening to my story. Emily?
Wow, thank you so much, Tanya. Every time I hear that, I still like just get goosebumps thinking about that. It's such a powerful story, and I hope everybody, you know, got something out of it and really is able to reflect and think about that. So as Tanya mentioned, we share this story with you today to challenge you to think about what kinds of unconscious bias you may be harboring. Racism is a cultural construct. So ask yourself, in that nurse's shoes, might you have made the same assumption as that nurse in that hospital? And I just want to clarify that this did not happen here at this hospital. Just want to clarify that. That would never happen here at this hospital. So I just want you all to take a moment to think about that and think, have I ever made an assumption and what did that look like? And just have a moment to yourselves to reflect about that. So I'm going to quickly spotlight myself to show you how these recipes turned out. And okay, here we go. All right, because they are beautiful. So our greens are very nice looking. Here they are, our gorgeous, gorgeous collard greens. So grateful for these nutrient-dense vegetables. So we can plate that up. And then I'm just going to show you our okra stew. So collard greens, I think one of the reasons people don't like them is they're very, very tough. But if you just give them some time and really let them cook gently in the broth, they'll be so flavorful and so enjoyable. So we can put some fresh sliced tomatoes on top of this, just to make it a little pretty. And this is our okra stew. Okay, so just pick this up. So really, really flavorful, lots of vegetables in here. Again, and this is lovely eaten on its own, maybe eaten over some rice, would be really tasty too. So here's our okra stew. Okay, collard greens, okra stew. And then I just want to show you the inside of the fritters, how different. They actually look a lot like bread. So they look a lot like bread. So for my gluten-free friends, this is a great little bread, kind of like a bread snack. So those are our recipes for today. So in closing, I don't know if any of you out there have heard of the author Ibram X. Kendi. He is the author of a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. That's a really powerful book. And he says, and I'm going to quote directly here, in America, it's as though racist ideas are constantly rained on your head. You have no umbrella, and you don't even know that you're wet with those racist ideas, because the ideas themselves lead you to believe that you're dry. Then someone comes along and says, hey, you know what? You're all wet. And these ideas are still raining down on your head. And that person says, here's an umbrella. You can say, thank you. I didn't even realize that I was drenched. So to close our class today, I will turn it back over to Tanya to close with a prayer for Black History Month. And Tanya, just give me a moment. I'll run over and spotlight you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tanya.
Yes. Let's end in a prayer, everyone. Spirit of abundance, God of grace, Mother of hope, We take a breath to remember those stories that are all around us. The stories that can be passed over, yet they make us family. These are the stories that make us whole. These stories need not divide us, but instead bring us together. These stories make us family. This month in our nation's character is Black History Month. Help us to realize that Black history is all of our histories. May the day come when these stories are so wildly taught that no month need be separately divided. There are so many beautiful stories that need to be told. There are so many beautiful stories that we need to hear. Spirit of abundance, widen our vision. God of grace, let us know all of our histories. Mother of hope, remind us that we are most human when we see the humanity in others. God bless.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And thank you to everybody for your participation this afternoon. I think that is a perfect way to end this class. And I really appreciate everyone for attending, for spending your time with us this afternoon, and most grateful to Tanya for sharing her story, that beautiful poem, and that sensational prayer. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Okay, be well.
Be well.